Made by Marzipan presents How to Assemble a Block Quilt. Today I'll be demonstrating the assembly of my log cabin quilt. However, these techniques can be used to assemble any quilt made from blocks. Begin by laying out the blocks in your preferred order. Make sure that the colors and prints feel balanced when they are viewed as a whole. You may want to make sure they all point the same direction. We'll first sew the blocks into horizontal strips. I recommend that beginning quilters do this in 3 block segments. Start by laying the first block in the row face down on top of the second block in the row. Pin along the left side. Open the blocks. Lay the third block face down on top of the second and pin along the right side. Sew along each of the pinned sides with a 1/4 inch seam. Be sure that you're only sewing through 2 blocks at a time. Then press your seams. I prefer to press on the top of the fabric. Repeat with the next set of 3 blocks and continue until you reach the end of the row. I only have 6 blocks in a row, so I'm ready to sew my 2 sets of blocks together. Double check that the blocks are facing the proper direction. Pin along the right side. Sew with a 1/4 inch seam and then press. Repeat with all the remaining rows of blocks. To attach the rows together, lay one strip face down on top of another. Sew along the long edge with a 1/4 inch seam. There are many ways to put a quilt together, but in this tutorial I'll focus on the easiest methods. I highly recommend using a fabric adhesive spray to stabilize the layers. This means you can skip pinning and the layers are much less likely to shift or wrinkle during sewing. Select a spray that will dissolve when washed. A bed sheet makes an easy and inexpensive backing for a quilt. It also means you won't have a seam down the back where you joined fabrics. Beginners might want to avoid choosing a backing with a directional pattern. I've selected a low loft cotton batting for this quilt. Low loft batting is the easiest to sew through. Take a moment to read the packaging as it has important information about care and washing. Spread the backing fabric face down. Fold the batting in half on top of the fabric. Spray the adhesive directly on the uncovered half of the fabric. Then unfold the batting, smoothing it down over the sprayed half of the fabric. You can reposition the batting for a while, so take the time to smooth out any wrinkles. Repeat with the other half of the batting. Now repeat the process with the assembled quilt top. Center the quilt top on the batting and fabric layers. Fold in half. Spray the back side of the folded quilt top, then unfold to adhere it to the batting. The quilt top should be face up. Smooth out any wrinkles. Repeat for the other half of the quilt top. If your batting and backing are larger than your quilt top, you can trim most of the excess fabric, but it's a good idea to leave a couple inches of overhang if possible. You can buy a water-soluble pen to draw sewing marks, but they can be difficult to see on colorful patterned quilts. So here's a helpful tip. Masking tape, painter's tape, or washi tape make great sewing guides. These tapes come in various widths and can be used to create stripes or a grid to follow on your quilt top. Since this log cabin quilt has straight seams, I'm only going to use tape to mark my beginning rows of stitches. After that, I can judge where the next row should be by following the previous stitches and remaining parallel to my seams. Since I'm sewing this quilt on a regular sewing machine, I'll need to roll up one side to reduce bulk. Tightly roll from the right towards the center and secure the top and bottom ends with clothespins. Later, when you're ready to sew the other half, you'll roll the opposite side and turn the quilt upside down to feed it through the machine. Now we're ready to quilt. If you happen to own a walking foot for your machine, this is a great project to use it on. A walking foot helps to feed the top and bottom layers of fabric evenly through the machine. If you don't own one, that's okay. You'll be fine if you've used low loft batting. If your machine came with a table, use it. I also like to load several bobbins with thread before I get started. You'll use a lot of thread, so this will save you time. I'm lining up the edge of my sewing foot with the edge of the washi tape in the center of my quilt. It's a good idea to begin quilting in the center so that the fabric flattens out evenly on both sides of the quilt. While sewing, place both hands flat on either side of the needle. The idea is to smooth out any wrinkles and provide a flat sewing surface. Don't tug at the fabric or the blocks may look warped. I've chosen one of the easiest quilting methods for this quilt, straight vertical lines. Mine are 1/4 inch apart, but you can sew them up to 3 inches apart. My quilt is assembled. Now I just need to add the binding. I'll save that for my next sewing tutorial. To see how to assemble the log cabin quilt block, click the link above or visit my website, madebymarzipan.com. Check out other DIY tutorials on Style Hall's YouTube Partnership Network. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you won't miss my next project.